Okay, so Amanda interviews, take two, but different takes.
What are the long-term effects? If, like, so what do we care if a woman doesn't get her period? Women don't like getting their periods. They say it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, and when you don't get your period and you're young and you're competing, you think it's the greatest gift ever. You're like, why would I even want to get it back? This means I'm a competitive athlete. It means that I'm probably thin enough now and that I have less body fat. So why get it back? But the truth of that is that it means that you are not healthy. It means that your body is not doing all the things that it's supposed to be doing because it's not getting enough nutrients, enough energy, and you're not getting the estrogen that you need to form your bones and your brain in those critical years.
So when you don't get that energy to your bones, your brain, what happened to your bones? What happened to your bones?
I had osteopenia by the age of 21 and was diagnosed with osteoporosis by 25. I have the bones of an 85-year-old.
Are there ways to train women now that we know this, where they can, do we have to give up long distance running, or are there ways you can continue long distance running, training differently?
When I'm asked about whether or not there are ways to run distance safely and healthy, I almost, this is why I wanted to do this documentary, because absolutely, in terms of, if to be pragmatic, of course there are ways to train healthy. The problem is systemic. It's that right now the system is set up to not train healthy and to not support the woman as a whole person versus the racehorse. And it's no one's fault. It's a system that was designed well before female athletes were even competing. And it hasn't adapted while we're getting better and there's more education and awareness until there is a system in place that first addresses that changes the training cycle for women. It's a culture, and it's not as easy as just telling someone to just, oh no, just train less, eat more, and you're going to be successful.
All right, we're going to come back to that question later. I'm trying to get you to say, when you lose your period for a while and you get osteoporosis, that means your bones are more susceptible to breaking. You're more susceptible in your
Yeah.
bones. So I'm going to say, so what happens? What does it mean that you have osteoporosis? What happens? You keep running? The way you explained to me, which convinced me to do this, and the way James did is very simple. We didn't know this. You don't get your period. You have osteoporosis. You're more susceptible to all kinds of injuries. The injuries lead to physical harm. The physical harm leads to mental harm. I'm trying to see that just very simple. And the problem with osteoporosis, among other things, is that if you continue running, you're much more susceptible to.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we want you to say.
So when you lose your period, it contributes to loss of bone density as well, and osteopenia, osteoporosis, which makes you much more susceptible to breaking your bones. Like I said, I have the bones of an 85-year-old, and I have broken many bones. Whether or not I continue training or not, I can easily break a bone. I've had 4 surgeries in the past 3 years. I haven't run in 10. And well, what do you do about that? You know, it leads to also mental issues as well. You're constantly fighting the chronic pain that people don't see. You're constantly running to doctors that are confused because they don't seem to understand that, well, you're so healthy, you can run, you can lift weights, which actually all that extra exercise is making you worse. Because the common solution when people have osteoporosis, they tell women, oh, you should train, you should start exercising, you should start lifting weights and whatnot. And all of the prescriptions for how to fix this, the common problem, are actually just hurting us more.
Straighten up again. Center yourself a bit more on the chair. All right.
It's definitely not a matter that I need to exercise more or lift more weights. the real solution would be to stop lifting more and stop exercising so much, because your body is just constantly in this fight or flight mode. When they say things like, oh, you're burned out, you have adrenal burnout or adrenal fatigue, whatever the heck that means. Like, yeah, we live in permanent adrenal burnout. I mean, if you look at our charts, it's like, it would be a breakdown for the average person.
Let's talk about the relationship between running and food and weight. I would imagine that if you're running, all the people care about, and you said earlier, is how fast you go. So who cares if you weigh 500 pounds or 20 pounds as long as you go fast? Is there a belief in female long distance running that you have to run thin to run fast, and is that correct?
I think the belief is starting to change, that you don't, pardon?
Yes, yeah, I think we believe that.
I think that the belief that you have to run thin to run fast is starting to change, or wanting to change. But I think if you ask any collegiate or high-level athlete that's a runner, it doesn't matter if that's even the awareness, that they know that, okay, it's really not about the weight. They even know at a certain level, because I remember even knowing at a certain level that I was too thin, that if I gained some weight, I would probably be stronger. It's sick, but it's like a status symbol. And it's a quietly known, never said out loud status symbol, that to be the thinnest one on the team, to be the thinnest one on the starting line, it's like a badge of honor. And I actually recall like being applauded that I was naturally small boned and naturally built like a runner, so I had less pressure to lose weight, whereas I had, so many female teammates and runners that they would say things like, you're running heavy, you need to tighten up, you must have had a bad weekend, you have a bad practice, and there was automatically like, what did you eat this weekend? What did you?
Who's putting this pressure on you?
At the end of the day, you're putting the pressure on yourself. At a certain point, you are your own, you're an adult at a certain stage. It develops earlier, and as a parent, and I think this is where I conflict with myself, because people say, would you do it over again? I will be honest, there is a part of my brain that is stuck in a prison that I don't believe you ever recover from all of the obsessive compulsive components that come with that. Do I know the boundaries now? Yes, I know the boundaries, and I know how to stay on the positive side of the line, but I don't think, unless you can erase your brain, I live with it every day and I struggle with it, and it's something that I can see I can meet another woman, and within 30 seconds I can know whether she has it or not, because it's also a brain thing. Would I wish it upon my daughter? Right now, unless the system was changed, and I get this question a lot from parents, I would be terrified to put my daughter in a sport like distance running, gymnastics, or dance.
Let's talk about the mental images. So now you are a young woman who winds up with bone density of an 85-year-old, a lot of injuries. What does that do to your mental health? How is your mental health affected by all this?
How is my mental health affected by the physical components? When you're not getting estrogen, when you are at this extreme energy deficit, when you have all of these issues, your brain is not functioning correctly. It can't function correctly.
Take it back a little bit.
So when you're experiencing all of these physical ailments, it affects your mind as well. And on a physiological level, like, your brain chemistry is actually different. You're not thinking clearly. You're actually not even seeing the effects clearly. I remember I cut off my parents I was in the US and I was running, and my parents were in Canada, and I was over the age of 18. And so legally, there was nothing that they could do, and they were devastated when they saw what was going on with me. I came home for Christmas one year, and I looked emaciated, and I was so clearly tired, and yet I was obsessed with getting my training in every day. I remember one day it was a blizzard, literally like a blizzard outside. I'm from Northern Ontario. And my dad, who was an athlete himself, and he was always like, my dad is like a no excuse kind of guy. And I was lacing up my shoes one morning in this blizzard when I was home, and I was clearly way too thin, and I was clearly just so energy drained. And he came and stood in front of me and was like, what do you think you're doing? And I was like, I have a 90-minute run today. And he was like, Amanda, are you insane? There's a blizzard outside. You are so tired. You're clearly anemic. You're underweight. This is insane. You're not going out there. And I fought him, like literally, I fought him hand and foot, and told them that I was going to get on the next plane after my run and go home. And going home meaning back to school. And my parents were so worried, and there was like nothing that they could do. And sure enough, I went back to school and I cut them off because I didn't want to hear what they had to say.
But I'm confused by that story, because I thought the whole point was that people are not giving women the correct preventative protection. And now you have parents who say, don't do this, and you're still doing it. So where is
Because
you have to explain to the audience the difference between who's at fault here. And I thought coaches and parents were at fault by saying, no, walk it off, it's fine. But you're saying your parents said, what the hell are you doing?
I was very lucky in that my parents saw the problem. I was very unlucky in that the system didn't see the problem, because I was still competing and I was still performing, and I was winning races and breaking records, and I thought my parents just didn't get it. And I coming from a small town, this was like a big ticket out, and this was getting me to a whole different stage, and there was a lot of attention on me, and I thought this was what's their problem? There's are they jealous? Are they upset that they think I should come home? It was easier to cut them off, and I would cut off anybody who saw a problem.
Do you think that you were in your right frame of mind at that point?
No, absolutely. I don't think I was in my right frame. I know I was not in my right frame of mind. In fact, I think, and there's a disposition for women that fall into this to be, usually they have a higher intellect level where they are self-aware enough to know the rational side and also how to manipulate the rational side and how to explain themselves into why it's right, why what they're doing is right, because there is an element that you don't want to lose. It's like if you talk to any anorexic, as much somebody will say, you look skeletal, and they will know that that's not a compliment, but yet there's still something about the competitiveness of being like, yeah, I'm winning.
I need you to talk about, I wasn't in my right frame of mind because I was already experiencing the negative effects of
Okay.
the anorexic is good with me. So were you in your right frame of mind?
I don't think I was in my right frame of mind. I was already experiencing the effects of, estrogen loss, amenorrhea, anemia. I mean, my body was basically trying to survive, and there's a chemical imbalance going on in my brain, and I was actually very robotic.
You're kind of describing the same words, you're kind of using the same words that an addict would use. Is this like a drug addiction?
It's funny. Whenever somebody would say to me, you're so disciplined, you're so driven, you have so much perseverance, and the the rational, the outward side of me would say, oh, thank you. And in my head, I would go, it's called addiction. It's called obsessive compulsiveness and addiction. And I believe that too much of anything is addiction. And it's interesting, right? Because if you, I've later studied like real drug addicts, like high, like meth, heroin addicts that have had lifetimes, and what saved them often is distance running or endurance sports, because you almost need that level of it produces a chemical difference in your brain that gives you a high like nothing else, and it is an addictive factor. And that, combined with the disposition for someone, especially a female, to be in the sport of distance running, which is every sport's worst nightmare. There's almost I forget getting the word for it, but like the embrace the pain, love the torture. Like almost you love the physical. Like I actually remember feeling I can't feel productive unless I feel like I have hurt myself in some way. Like I've pushed myself through some sort of pain. Now the pain, whether that's physical or whether that's mental, like it almost nothing feels worth it. Nothing is enjoyable, and it's manifested in my work in all kinds of things where it's like, if it's too easy, I don't care. It's not worth it. Why? It's boring. So like, what is it that can make it more painful, more worthy of being, like I always say, to be extraordinary, there's that extra.
Is this similar or analogous to the concussion problem with NFL athletes?
I don't really know a lot about the concussion problem with football athletes, other than they've done documentaries on it. It gets a lot of attention. And thank God now it's almost like a turning point that they've made it such an issue. And the mainstream public has become so aware of it. How they become aware of it? Through documentaries.
What do we know about the female triad crisis that we didn't used to know? What have we learned in the last 10, 20, 30 years? I mean, at a point, I assume at one point, they used to think smoking cigarettes was good for you. They used to think margarine was good for you. Is it the same thing? It seems like there's a point in which we know now that we didn't know.
Yeah, I think we are at the point now where we know, there's no question that, female running is actually relatively new in history. Like, I mean, Catherine Switzer was one of the very first to run. She's still alive, and she was banned from the she had to costume herself as a man in the marathon because they didn't think women were capable of running distance like that. So a lot of this is just evolution over time. We learn over time what happens, and we didn't know that these kind of problems, especially the female triad, which wasn't even given a name for so long. Like I said, the physical and mental side of it is very, very non-visible, especially at the time. But now we know the long-term consequences, and now it's time to change a system.
What do you mean by changing it? Okay, so there's a crisis. What do we do about it? What's the solution?
The solution is to change the culture and the infrastructure around women's running. And when I say, and programs around the country will say this, and I know because I've gone through them, where they will say, we have everything set up for your best interest. So we have therapists, we have psychologists, psychiatrists. I mean, I was evaluated by a psychiatrist numerous times because in order to run the 10,000 meters on the track, which is the hardest race, arguably one of the hardest races in the world, you had to be psychiatrically assessed to make sure you were sound of mind to run it. Well, female runners are pretty intellectual, and they know how to trick any psychiatrist into thinking that you're gonna run this race. You're gonna say all the right things. And, okay, wait, I lost my train of
Can I
thought.
stop you for a second? You're doing this, and you have to decide, because you're documentary, you know more about this than I do. You're going like, what a problem, boy I love it, it's all me. What a problem, boy I love it, it's all me. I mean, if you're saying, cops say, high-level, special forces guys say that, I know how to trick the psychiatrist, so if I go to Iraq and I get shot, it's my fucking fault. You have to decide whether you wanna tell the world in this documentary that it's on the women, it's their fault, and they're just really smart and really good at it. Because you do half of what you said today, I could cut this, so what you said so far to make this argument. Female runners are smarter, they're crafty, they'll do whatever the fuck they want, they love it, and they're gonna lie to anyone to get it. It's all them. Or you
No,
have to say,
that's more me.
Or you have
Yeah.
to say, listen, a lot of people died climbing Mount Everest before they figured out a better way to climb Mount Everest. They didn't stop climbing Mount Everest. They figured, oh, listen, you go up this way, you get a Sherpa, you wear better clothes, and they didn't say, well, fuck the mountain, we're just going to keep dying. You have to say, female running is great. We want to keep it up, or we don't. And if we do, we need to change the system by getting. You tell me, coaches, people have to say. But if you're saying, well, they gave a psychiatrist.
No, but you didn't let me finish.
But you do it all the time. You did me on the phone. You did it in this whole interview. I'm not sure you're aware of it. But if you're saying we don't listen to our parents, we don't listen to psychiatrists, we trick everyone, we're smarter than you, that's it's interesting, but it's a different issue than now that coaches and people know, here's what we can do. So if this kind of documentary works, you're going to make an impact on people. If you had 30, I'm going to ask you another question. Are you willing? Just do this do this absolutely, I ask lots of people this question. Do this, absolutely don't think about this. Just I'm going to ask you the question and say, take a deep breath and ask this question. You have 60 seconds to tell 7 billion people in the world are going to be watching you about the female child problem and what do you want to do about it. You have 60 seconds. What do you want them to know? Go.
Whether you are a female athlete or you have a daughter, there's nothing greater than having having the glory and the drive of going through a sport, especially a sport that is as pure as running, at the highest level. It is the best metaphor for life, the best analogy. And do I think that we should stop women's running? Absolutely not. I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we have. But we need to do it in a way that supports women's health for the long term. And right now, that's not what's happening. Because right now, women are suffering from female triad syndrome, red S. The bottom line is what the biggest parts of why they're suffering are not visible in the young years. They don't really manifest and formulate until after, when it's really too late to do anything about it. And so how are we going to grow from this? We need to change the infrastructure around and a culture around what it means to be a healthy endurance sport athlete, endurance runner.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more thing. It's great, but we need to, you got to start from, it's great to be a runner, but we need to change, and you got to get specific, because there's so many things now in the world, in the environment. When people talk about climate change, there's lots of people say, what do I do? And no one knows the answer to that question. Even that kid in Sweden, whatever, she was like, this is a shame, this is a shame, this is a shame, but she didn't say to everyone, listen, here's what you do. There's an article now that they discovered in Italy. If they just turned off the pasta thing halfway through and let it boil by covering the pot, they would save a gazillion things of energy, and the Italians don't want to do it. But at least it's specific. You're not going to get a documentary that ESPN puts on prime time on Sunday night by saying we have to change. So you got to say, listen, it's great. Okay, we've said it's great. That part is fantastic. So we got to change the culture. Here's what we need to do. Coaches know this now. They have to test women for loss of period. What do you want them to do?
Okay.
You're being very amorphous about it, and you keep going, we know the problem. We've got red S decline, we've got all this stuff. Great. What do we do? And your first part was fantastic. It's great about being a women's runner, but there's a problem. You got to say, here's how we fix the problem. And just say the way you do, because I know you now, boom, 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 here's how we fix the problem.
So there is a problem. So how do we fix it? Number one, education and awareness by sharing this, by getting on board with what the problem is. Number two, by setting up an infrastructure in which, in order to compete at a certain level, The culture isn't, you have to be at this weight. It's actually, are you getting a period? Are you menstruating? Are you at a healthy BMI? What is your body fat percentage? And because BMI and body fat percentage are two different things. You can have a very healthy BMI with almost zero body fat, and that's not healthy. Are you getting the right estrogen? We need to bring in specialists that almost reverse the culture that is currently in women's running, meaning right now it's run thinner, run faster, it's a status symbol. We actually have to change that. And how do we change that, especially with very type A perfectionist individuals? We change that by making the reward, the outcome, what's praised, not being thinner, not losing your period. Just as before, that was the thing. When doctors said, oh, that's normal, you're a runner. Now they say, oh my God, you lost your period. When you get to the stage where you lose your period, that's a critical point. I think what needs to happen is somebody is amenorrheic, somebody is showing signs of an eating disorder, somebody is showing too low body weight, they're suspended from the team. They're suspended from the team until with a program in place, a mental and physical program that gets them up to a healthy weight, and you have to nip it in the bud fast when they're young. And if it gets past a point, they need to go into a rehab center. Bottom line. That's what has to happen.
Right, but you said it in like 25 minutes, so we need to say that quicker. So.
Okay, yeah, I'm not very good at sound bites.
No, but this is all about sound bites. Because, so this is what I heard.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, let's check. How do you solve the problem?
You get a specialist on board to suspend women from the team temporarily if they're not meeting certain health standards.
How do you solve the problem?
I'll look this thing.
Okay, so we have to say, this is what I heard you say. Because if people can't repeat this, it's not gonna work. So what I heard you say is, you gotta educate people, that's what we're trying to do now. You have to check their run fast, run thin is ridiculous. You have to run fast, yes, you have to be an athlete.
You have to run fast, run healthy.
Run fast, run healthy. So we're gonna test BMI.
Health.
You don't have to go on another thing about BMI. We're gonna test BMI, we're gonna test body weight, we're gonna test eating. If you don't make it, you're suspended.
Well, here's the thing.
3, we're gonna, period. You have to get your period. If you don't get your period, you're suspended.
Yeah, here's the thing. You change the infrastructure of what it means to be a healthy athlete. Like before, you were suspended from the team if you were too heavy. Like.
Okay, that's great, but you have to say that in a way that here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
Like, when you guys talk about this, I knew nothing about this 2 weeks ago.
Crazy.
I mean, no, but it seems like.
Yeah. No, I know. No.
I mean, how many athletes, in sports now, in fighting, you have a weigh-in, you have to be a certain weight, and you take a drug test. Otherwise, you don't get a match. End of fucking story. So, we talked about education, which is great, and a certain weight thing where you're not in, and you can.
It's like a drug test.
If you don't get a period, you're not in.
Well, and from what I gathered, it's counterintuitive because the way they were doing it was focusing on superficial things that don't really affect the results as much, as opposed to just saying healthy body equals stronger body equals better runner.
Without due respect, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, that's just tough.
Yeah.
If you say, look, it used to be run fast, run thin, don't get your period. The opposite now is true.
But it also is the third thing that I want to address is the mental health of it is because it's so extreme. These girls are like so.
But if you did the other thing, that would help the mental health. If you were in good weight, you're getting your period.
No, not necessarily, because of the amount of stress that you're under in those conditions.
But you would be under if we take away the physical